Okay, so thank you both for being here. We're very excited to have a chance to talk with two SF state alumni about their uh, graduate fieldwork there. And Isaac Cisneros was um, an undergraduate in political science who did his master's degree in international relations and at San Francisco State. Amalia Menjivar did a double degree in political science and international relations as an undergraduate at San Francisco State, and she is currently a master's student at Oxford, and she's in the middle of her research right now. And both of them are also Latin American Studies alumni. So let's start off with you telling us a little bit about your field work and what you did or are doing in your respective cases. And who would like to start?
You can start, Isaac.
Okay,
I will start. All right. So as Professor Darling mentioned, I am currently in the midst of doing fieldwork in El Salvador. What I am doing is through conducting interviews with indigenous communities, I am trying to gather their perspectives on archaeological sites here in El Salvador, as well as their connection to what they call sacred lands, ancestral lands, and also seeing how they've been able to preserve their identity and the culture within contemporary Salvadorian society, and perhaps through the existence of these archaeological sites.
Isaac?
So my name is Isaac Cisneros. Just recently graduated with my topic was, actually my thesis was contraband in South America, more specifically in Peru. My focus was not to deal with the criminality of the smuggling operations or contraband and all that jazz. It's more centralized into the government policies in creating such matters that deemed it more so, and the fact that the definition of contraband has been very vague for a long time, especially in international relations perspective. It was a very interesting experience, especially when you're trying to create an original idea that no one talks about in regards to an issue that has been widely, not only in Peru, but most likely in the underdeveloped countries. So it was a grand opportunity for me to do some book work, as well as the vast amount of research that's been conducted in the fieldwork perspective.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your research site? It's in the background, and tell us a little bit about this place and how it was, why it was such a good place to work on this issue.
So the background that I have right here is in Puno, Peru, which is it's about a good 6-7 hours southeast of Lima. And this area was very significant because a lot of traffic through commercial goes through the Andean region, bordering from Chile to Bolivia. And what's significant about it is because when you have two different countries with two different set of policies amongst nations, you're gonna have different perspectives. And it was very interesting when I picked out this location, because it was a good ground to understand the lay of the land, how people perceive what policies they can do and cannot do as based on the countries of origin they come from. And what happens is, when you're trying to define what the definition of contraband from each country, they give you a different answer. And that right there, it becomes a problem, especially in Peru, because they can't figure out what the definition of contraband. So when I did my research in Puno, Peru, it was very evident that you have to do a multi-layer set of circumstances in order to understand, one, what are the causes, why the causes of contraband exist in such regions, like in a rural region, like in the Andean region in Peru, Bolivia, and Chile. And secondly, what was like, could this easily be prevented? And obviously, that's when you say easily prevented, I mean, like, is the policy itself evident enough where it's become, I wouldn't say corrupted, but misguided? And so when I did, so when it came to this opportunity, it was absolutely clear that with the help of some members of the University Nacional Altiplano de Puno, who extend their open arms towards me with this issue, it was a great opportunity for me to go out there and be on hand and to understand the hard facts, and to present a case where, well, these two countries, as a sample size of a bigger issue, other countries can model off. Okay, we need to really tackle this subject in order to further the discussion. So.
And Amalia, can you tell us a little bit more about the places in El Salvador where you're doing your field work?
Yes. So there is an abundance of archaeological sites in El Salvador. 5 of the archaeological parks are owned by the states. The rest are just kind of referred to as archaeological sites, which means they're not really recommended for tourists, but you can still visit some of them. Due to just the location of the indigenous community that I'm interviewing, which is mainly the Nahuapipiles, a lot of them are found mostly in the western part of El Salvador. So I've been looking at a lot more archaeological sites here in Western El Salvador, such as, and not particularly that they have a relationship, that they had a Nahuapipil presence, but just in general, just archaeological sites, since I'm looking at them just, purely as sites and the value that they hold, not just as the connection. Because for that reason, I'm also asking the Nahuapipiles what connections they have to other lands. But I've been visiting sites such as Cara Sucia, which is one of the closest ones to Guatemala. There is a famous site here called Tacuzcalco. A lot of people outside of El Salvador haven't really heard about it, but it's very popular here. I've also been visiting a lot of colonial sites, which I didn't think that I was going to do, but because through some of these interviews, some of the indigenous people have told me that the connection is not so much to the colonial site where, let's say, the ruins of a church is, but more so the land, that it had a sacred purpose to them, and there's a connection there, and they still go and do rituals. So I've been visiting, I didn't think that would come about it. I thought it was just going to be purely archaeological sites, such as the most famous parks like Joya de Seren, which is the only UNESCO World Heritage Site here. There's Tazumal, which is also heavily studied, but there's also some other ones that, again, aren't as well known outside of the country that I've been visiting. And it's more so just been guided based on what my interviews have been telling me, but primarily in Western El Salvador is where I've been looking at.
That's really fascinating because the known sites are Maya, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you're looking at the sites where there are actually still descendants of the people that
Yes, I'm looking at a little bit of both because I'm kind of already trying to think of how I want to organize my thesis. And I think one of the chapters that I want to have is what value do the archaeological parks have for the state, like state perspective. And then another chapter could be like indigenous perspective on the sites. So for the purpose of the state's perspective, I've been looking at the actual 5 parks that the state owns. Most of them have had Mayan presence, were built by Mayans, such as Cihuatan. That's a very famous one here too. That one had a Mayan presence, but somewhere in like the 10th or 11th century, Pipiles did arrive there too. So it's very interesting kind of exploring that. And it's been a little bit, I feel like I'm having to learn triple what I would have thought I was going to learn, because not only am I learning about what they consider sacred sites and connections, but I'm also having to learn a lot about the history of it, such as, I naively thought that maybe there were sites that were just occupied by one community, but no, it goes like, no, there was Mayans before then, and then before that there was this community perhaps. So it's been very enriching, but also just a lot of information that I didn't think that I was gonna walk away with. But that it's a good thing that I really love what I'm doing, because it's all very fascinating to me.
That's great. And this leads us also into the question of how doing field work is different from doing research in a library or in another kind of setting. Could you continue with that? And then we'll ask Isaac's perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So at Oxford, it's so nice, obviously, to have so many. I think the Bodleian library system has something like 13 million books in its system. So it's so nice to kind of have access to so much information. And, normally I would plan out my days where, okay, I'm going to go to this library where I can find this document. And I go, I ask for it, I sit, and I'm in there. I find something else, it leads me to it, I get it, and then that's it. I go home at the end of the day. Fieldwork, gathering information in fieldwork is just something different every day. And as much as I could say, okay, I'm going to plan this, and then if this comes out, then I'll go this, it kind of has like a mind of its own, and you just have to kind of follow. I mean, it's much like a library, except it's not as controlled, because you're not just dealing with the books and what you want to look at. You're kind of letting the research take you where it wants to take you, where if it wants to take you to talk to somebody, then you go and do that. Where if it leads you to look at a different site, then you have to go and do that. So it's just ever changing. And I guess one of the things that I've had to learn is to just be flexible and go with the flow, because that's just, if you try to stick to your ways and try to stick to routine and not go outside of it, you're going to be very limited in the scope of what you're going to get, the information that you're going to get, compared to a library where you can kind of control that setting a little bit more.
That's an interesting perspective. Isaac, can you tell us a little bit about your experience with fieldwork and how you noticed it as a different way of researching?
So I'm more of an optimistic type. So for me, it was I have a quote, okay, when I first started out, was 1,000 traveling books does not make one good trip. And so when it came to that, it was, you could do all the research in the library you want, right? But it doesn't prepare you for the hard truth when you're out there on your own. And when I took that leap, when I took that leap into the unknown, which is field work, you get the sense of, being a part of something that you thought it would be greater than your own. And so when you do field work, it's a different type of, it's radically different from the classroom, because you're applying what you've learned in the classroom. So, and there's no second chances. If you either know it or you don't. And for me, it was an eye-opening experience. I've encountered situations where, I wasn't prepared for it. And then there are situations that I was like, oh, thank God I learned this. So for me, it was a fantastic experience overall. I would not regret one step of making that decision of doing field work. And on top of that, you get to pick up things as you go. And you can't learn that in the classroom, I have to say. Especially when you're out there and you're taking all your senses in, and you're like, holy crap, I'm doing this. Like, it's okay to step back and just take a breath of like, wow, I didn't expect to read from a textbook certain things, and then I'm actually applying it to the field. And I was like, holy crap, it actually works, or holy crap, it doesn't work, but I'm going to improvise to make it work. And so doing field work is actually the best decision I ever did. Now, you have to say that when you're doing your thesis, it's kind of different, because you have to sit down on the computer and being, away from the world for a while. But I think it's all worth it, because you get the sense of, I think the best description I did when I did field work is a sense of wonder. And so yeah, would I do it all over again? Absolutely. I wouldn't have other way, especially when I did it during COVID. Now, not many researchers would have the, have the stones to go out and to an unknown country you've never been to during a pandemic and do research like what I did. And I gotta say, I gotta pat myself on the back because I didn't know I was gonna because I was gonna go stir crazy sometimes, but it was worth it. The patience, the discipline that you have to be in every day in and day out, the timing, the schedules that you have to do, overcoming and adapting situations, it all pays off at the end. So
Can you tell us a little bit about the support system that you had? You mentioned the people at the Universidad Nacional del Altiplano. Tell us a little about your support system.
well, when I first got out there, if it wasn't for a couple professors there, they were instrumental in my research. Because it's gonna, I might as well say this. My Spanish is not great, but the people there were so humble, so kind. They understand the situation. They were excited about my research just as I am. And to have that support from another university, like we're in this academic community, we're not alone. That's what I've learned, especially from different universities. Like, oh yeah, you're studying this. Well, I can help you out because I'm part of this university. And like, I could never be more grateful for the people in that university. They extend their arms to me very kindly. They shelter me. They show me where to find food. They went a step above and beyond for, I can never be grateful for their hospitality. And they were the people that I had to interview, they had connections to. And yeah, it's just that support is absolutely needed. I cannot emphasize that enough. Whatever I needed, they were there. And even if I got food poisoning, which happened for one day, but they were very generous. It's like, hey, you need to go to the hospital. Do you need this? Like they were a step above and beyond. And to have a support system like that is critical for fieldwork. And for me, you can't be doing this alone. I gotta say, it's the hard truth. You can't do this alone. You're gonna need help along the way. And if you do it alone, then it's gonna be much more difficult. Like, it's okay to ask for help.
And yeah, and I want to mention, this is an agreement between San Francisco State and the Universidad Nacional del Altiplano that we support our students, and we mutually support each other and our students and our scholars. Amalia, can you tell us a little bit about your support system, which is the different?
Yes, my support system is a little bit different than Isaac's. As he was talking, I was listening because I definitely need to take that advice. I'm somebody who once I kind of get started on something, I kind of have tunnel vision, and I tend to separate myself or isolate myself from a lot of people, which I've realized now 2 months into it is not something that I should have done. You need your support system. But I am also in a very unique and blessed position that my father is actually from El Salvador, and he retired here 8 years ago. So my father and my stepmother in the country, And for about the first month that I was here, I referred to them as my co-researchers because they were out there with me scoping out sites. You know, there's a lot of places that I have visited in the past and I feel comfortable with, but there's a lot of other sites where I didn't want to be, you know, stand out by just kind of looking around and asking too many questions. So I went with my parents, and that's something that a lot of researchers, you know, don't get to have, aren't blessed to have that opportunity where, my parents were there with me, and my father was fully embracing his Indiana Jones life. I think he misses it now because I've been away from him. I've been away for them for about a month now doing my actual interviews, but I think he misses taking the truck out and seeing, like, is this road paved? Is it not? And some of these roads have been awful. Like, I kid you not, like I thought he was gonna like hit the top of the truck just by bouncing around so much. But with that said, I think also it's because I talked to them about my research. Sometimes I'm getting support, but I think sometimes, as Isaac said, you kind of just it's kind of like you kind of need to sometimes step away from the research and maybe just have some different type of support. And I've also been very fortunate that a lot of the people that I've interviewed here I know in such a short time, it might be weird to call them friends, but I feel some kind of connection with them. And even though we're done with the interview, I've still, you know, invite them out for a milkshake or for I don't know if that's the word for licuado in English. Is that licuado? Smoothie?
No.
Yeah. So I still try to kind of keep those connections, and we'll talk about things, you know, we'll talk about an event that's going on or some type of new fruit that I've discovered or vegetable that I'm like, I love this vegetable. How do I prepare it? What do I make it with? So sometimes it's nice to have support in that way that has nothing to do with your research in a way, just because, again, for myself, I tend to just have that tunnel vision. But yeah, the support is there. I think if you reach out for it, if you have it, not, you know, and I'm trying to think of that objectively. If my parents weren't here, I think, you know, that support can be found, but you have to kind of foster sometimes those relationships too. And again, yeah, that's my support system.
Okay.
Oh, can I include something real quick?
Yes, please do.
Also, another thing that I've learned is you're gonna have to go out of your comfort zone, especially when you're on your own, because in my case, it was very I never thought a million years I was gonna go to Peru. Okay. And so when I first got out there, you know, my parents from El Salvador. I was born in the States, and I'm in Peru. Like, not to mention, I'm the first of SF state to go to Peru. And so when you have that craziness going on in you know, in my mind when I went out there, it's okay to go out of your comfort zone once in a while, but it's just like having that support actually does pay off because especially when I first just got out there, I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna have to get used to this somehow. So I have to, you know, throw myself out there. And like Amalia said, like, it's kind of funny where you find yourself interviewing people and then you become kind of attached to. Like like when I'm not gonna disclose the name because obviously when it comes to research it's different, but I had once the interview's over, I had a beer with the judge just talk about other things, and it's just wild because they want to know what I think about life because I have a US perspective, and then I want to know what they think about life in a Peruvian's perspective, and you'll find interesting stories along the way. And it's not part of the research, it's part of the experience, I said. And so just to reinforce what Amalia said, yeah, it's doing field work. It's a whole different level for sure.
Yeah. And sometimes also you find things that you might want to go back later and turn into research on a different project.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's been a struggle of mine because, again, there's so many things that are connected. At first, I thought I could look at the archaeological sites by themselves, which was you know, obviously my background is not in archaeology or anthropology or even sociology. So it's just, I thought, okay, I could just do the sites. But then it became, no, we talk about the sites and the people that built them like they're still in the past. But the Mayans are, you know, there's still a Mayan people. There's so many of them. So I figured it was really important to have that element of indigenous perspective. And even though I would have liked to have had the Mayan perspective, because of time, it just worked out the way that it did for me. But in the future, I would love to kind of get that perspective too. But talking to indigenous people, a lot of it became, okay, identity, culture, how do we preserve the culture? And then there was a little branch there. Okay, culture, let me look at identity and culture. And it just kind of kept going. And I realized I didn't want to include state perspective. I was like, no, I'm just going to stick to the communities in this. But you can't get away from that, obviously, where everything works within the bounds of the states and everything's connected somehow. And that's kind of how things have, for me, branched out too. And it's been hard to kind of narrow it, to keep it, you know, focused, which is such a big thing, I think. To keep in mind when you're doing field work is it's really important to have a game plan. And even though you have to be flexible with it and it will change, just to kind of think of it in some type of bounds, or else you're just going to spend time maybe researching things that you're not going to be able to use this time. You know, always keep the focus of the research. And I adjusted my focus a little bit now to include indigenous perspectives of archaeological sites, just because that way I get to keep the two most important elements to me and then insert other elements that are connected in there, but with still my primary focus. So just kind of a words of wisdom that I wanted to add.
No, and that's a great explanation of kind of how the process works.
And oh, sorry.
No, please.
And just to piggyback what Amalia said was always, if you get stuck on something and there's a million different directions, always refer back to your thesis statement. Like, what is your objective there? Many people, including myself, have gotten lost in the void. And then once you, like, what's your original intentions of being there in the first place? Because there'd be a lot of good stuff. I'm not gonna lie. Like, Amaya, you're going through the struggle right now.
So hard. It's been so hard because a lot of my interviewees want to talk to me about plant medicine. And I'm like, I don't know anything about plant medicine. Like, I want to learn about this. And it comes up in the interviews, and I would never ever cut off an interview subject if they're talking to me about something that they're interested in. You know, if we're going off topic completely, it's different. But they want to talk to me about spirituality, and that's so fascinating to me. But it's been so hard because I'm like, I don't know, and that's the problem. It's so hard to kind of keep the project to what it is, especially my thesis has to be 30,000 words. And at first I thought, like, how am I ever going to get to 30,000 words? And now I'm like, I feel like I'm going to run out of space. Honestly.
You're good. I reached 125. You're good. Yeah. I reached, I don't know the word count. I think it's like 42,000. I don't even remember. But yeah, you're going to reach there. Yeah. There's so much good stuff. And just from my perspective, you're on the right track. As a researcher, you have to take everything in, but at the end of the day, you're gonna have to pick and choose. That's all you gotta do. You just gotta pick and choose. And yes, they're all fascinating stuff. Believe me. Like, there's things I left out in my thesis, and they're like for another time. Like, it's for that, you're just gonna have to roll with the punches and just like, okay, things you're gonna have to sacrifice for the greater good of your paper, or things or sacrifice things that you're gonna have to be like, I want to put this off to the side. I want to get back to it eventually. So everything's great, but you're gonna have to be very selective at the end of the day. So
thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about how what you studied at San Francisco State has helped you with your fieldwork? How are you seeing those things in your fieldwork?
For me, it was ethnography. I believe ethnography is very critical for researchers to know, especially when you're trying to know what style of interview you want to conduct or what kind of survey you want to conduct. It's kind of funny, like especially international relations, which is not being talked enough, where if you're going to go a thesis route, and especially a research route, or any other university, for that, I think ethnography, it plays a huge role in field research. Because there's things I never knew about until like we've discussed in person, professor. And when you told me, it was like, oh, read this book. It's actually going to help you. I'm like, okay. And it's all about ethnography, what proper structures you want to do. There's things that like, okay, what's the day? What's the temperature? What's the feeling? What is the atmosphere? Like that's not talked about. And like we know like, you know, what the political situation of certain country. But when you're out in the field, you're gonna have to like those tips. Like for me, like that type of stuff. I think that's what counts. Always keep and like going with ethnography. Always keep a little pocketbook to take notes. I never thought that I have a use for it until I got to Peru because it was so critical. Because you'll be like, you write down like, okay, time, date, area. And then when you refer back to when you're writing your paper, you'd be like, oh, I wrote this down. I got to get my notebook. I got to write, I got to type this up because you memorize it from those key details. I think ethnography is extremely important in field research.
And Malia, can you think of things that you learned as an undergrad that have come back and been helpful to you now?
Absolutely. I loved my time at SF State. I've always said this and I always will say it. I love SF State. And as Professor Darling mentioned, I double majored in international relations and political science. And I also got a minor in Latin American studies, Latin American area studies. And that for me, I love the fact that I was even able to kind of have some type of regional focus while doing international relations. Because even though the department offers classes, as Professor Darling teaches them on Latin America, it's also really nice to know that you can take classes that are gonna, you know, help you not just towards the BA, but also towards your minor. And I think being able to have that and explore and learn that it's, you know, within international relations, Latin America is the region that I'm interested in. I think that was really invaluable to me. And I love that I was able to explore that fully. I also really loved all the professors that I had and how open-minded they were. It's something that sometimes we take for granted that, you know, a professor that will let you kind of follow your train of thought where it's going to lead you, even if they could already see like this, you're going to learn the hard way, but they still let you follow that. Like, oh, you want to argue that in a paper? Okay, well, all right, so go for it. And then somewhere in the middle of it, it's like actually, and it happened to me, and I say this from experience, but I love that I had a lot of professors within IR and in political science too, that let me explore those things and let me learn for myself. And I feel like that is something that's helping me in fieldwork because it's helping me to kind of just follow my hunch and still follow things. And then either, you know, half the time it's like, great, this worked out. And half the time it's kind of like writing a paper for those, you know, for classes where it's like, okay, maybe this didn't work out so great, but you still learn something. And I think if I didn't have that push to feel like I could do something like that, I would have felt like it's something that maybe I couldn't do. And I don't know if I'm expressing that the way that I want it to come across, but I think just being given so much like freedom and liberty, but within obviously the compounds of the class and the subject matter, it gives you confidence as a student, and that confidence that SF State kind of instilled in me from my professors that believed in me has translated over to my research and making me feel, you know, you're still going to feel imposter syndrome. I constantly feel it both at Oxford and here, but I think because I know that I've had some wonderful people that have believed in me and that have let me, you know, follow what I wanted to follow. And then I still ended up here. I think that it's a little bit of confidence. I think that the confidence and awareness and knowledge and the analysis, I think the analysis, it just came to me, is something that I I really appreciate that was a big focus in a lot of the IR courses. And I think analysis is so important here because I question everything, and through questioning things, I've been able to obviously to get a deeper understanding of a lot of subjects that I didn't understand before. So
and I want to piggyback off of that because for me, going to SF State was one of the best decisions I ever made. Because yes, like Molly said, doing having different perspectives makes me more open-minded. All the professors there, including Professor Darling, has been instrumental in my academic career.
Yeah.
And I could not be more, actually, I should say, with Amaya, we could not be more grateful for the support that is given us. I never thought to have a master's degree. I never thought that I was going to be there without the support of the professors and the staff there. Yes, we'll have wild ideas, and they'll be like, "Yeah, we got you. Crazy, but we got you." Like we could not emphasize that enough, and for us to be in the position that we're in now, we've learned so much, and we've learned to be thinking critically. We've learned to ask questions. Whether we agree or not, the point is we're having a dialogue, we're having a discussion, and I think that's what SFSA did to me. Hopefully, Amalia as well, because it definitely opened my perspective throughout life as well, not just in the classroom. So
yeah, perfectly said. Actually, yeah, that's exactly it. It just a lot of the things that I learned there, it's not just subject matter, but it's also just kind of like things that I could apply to my actual life, to me as a person. Again, that confidence to be able, as a student, one of the worst things that somebody, in a learning position could do is kind of stifle that creativity, that urge to want to learn more. And I love that at SF State, they didn't do that. They let us run with our crazy ideas so long as we could actually argue them well and support them well. And they taught us how to do that too. So, and that's something that I think, again, applies to just outside of the classroom too, like that confidence to know that you can have ideas and, maybe that are kind of out there, but so long as you're able to cite them well and support them and get your sources and know where it's coming from, then you'll get to where you want to go.
Well, as both of you are learning through your field work, the last question you should always ask in an interview is there anything that I should have asked and didn't, and that you would like to say?
I will start, I guess. I love this question, and I actually have somewhat started implementing it in my interviews. I hope you don't mind. It's just I've gotten a lot of different things though. A lot of different things. That's how I learned about plant medicine in a lot of interviews. But yes, well, we're doing this obviously with SF states, and one thing that I really want to stress is the importance of going for, Isaac mentioned stepping out of your comfort zone. I'm somebody who loves my bubble and my comfort zone, but I would have never been doing field work or even studied abroad. I studied abroad when I was in SF State. I went to Sciences Po in France, and I spent the first year at SF State thinking I could never do that. I don't have the money to do that. I'm not smart enough to do that. And through some wonderful people, not just that had studied abroad, but the department and even some professors, it's like, you can do that. Like, you can do that. You are smart enough. And, at the end of the day, it's like, what did I have to lose by applying? To me, the worst thing was to get a no. I was like, they're going to say no, they're going to say no. But even if you do get a no, I didn't get a no, obviously, but if you do get a no, it's like something else will come along. But I guess the whole point is don't shy away from things that scare you a little bit. You can still do things and be scared along the way. Because I thought that, okay, I'm so scared to study abroad. I'm so scared to do field work. I can't do it. you can still do it and be scared. I'm kind of living proof of that because, you know, yeah, I'm still sometimes scared, you know, like not just for like environment, but I mean, you know, my environment, I'm very fortunate that I feel very safe in, but, you know, there's still things that you can't anticipate, but I'm confident enough to know that I can overcome it. And I just want to give the kind of advice to anybody who's considering studying abroad that you absolutely can, or anything else that scares you, like an internship that might scare you, you can absolutely do it, and you can still be scared and figure it out along the way. And it's totally okay to ask questions, and we're all still trying to figure it out and learning along the way.
Just to go off of that, I think it's perfectly okay to be nervous, scared, frightened sometimes, because it makes you more focused. You know, whatever decisions that someone might have, it's okay, because we all walk through the steps. We're not the only ones that walk through the steps. There's been, our professor has walked through those steps of research, been out in the field. Like, we're not the only ones. So just to go off of what Amalia said, it's okay to ask questions, because you're not alone. So my thing is, be humble, be respectful, and if you do goodness to the world, you might get something goodness in return. So that's, I think, the biggest thing. If you go in headstrong and thinking you're gonna be this and that, no, just start simple and then go baby steps from there. And then just have fun on the way. So.
Well, that's good advice from both of you. Thank you so much. Thank you for participating in this talk, and for being such great examples of San Francisco State alumni. And anyway, it's great to get to talk to both of you, and best of luck. I know, Amalia, you need to get going because Fieldwork is always busy, and I know you have other appointments today. And Isaac, I know you have other things to do. So thanks so much for taking this time.
Yes, thank you both. It was great talking to you both.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Same here.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.